Have you heard about the two new bills? One's not a new bill, and the Paul Ryan bill and the Goodlatte bill going through the House.
Yeah. I mean, let me sound off on this because this is actually a complicated matter, and I've taken a position that's actually very pro-Trump and pro Stephen Miller, actually. So, okay, the DACA issue, the DACA babies, this is like the ultimate symbolism for the left. And now it's actually, babies being taken away from their mothers and fathers. They always know how to pull on the heartstrings.
Yeah.
Now, in itself, am I excited to give amnesty to DACA, whether that's a few 100,000 or a few million or something like that? No, in itself, I would not just support amnesty. And for a long time, for about 15 years, actually, the conservatives have been really on this meme. They say no amnesty for illegal immigrants, no amnesty for illegal immigrants. They're very solid on that.
Yeah.
But the fact is, Stephen Miller, and less so Trump, because let's be honest, Trump, we don't quite know what he thinks about anything. He just, he fires from the hip, talks from his gut, all that which is great in a way, but it is what it is. Stephen Miller has clearly studied these matters much more seriously. And he has, and I actually think single-handedly, changed the debate. He has brought in a lot of things that the immigration restrictionist movement, not so much the alt-right or me or whatever, but kind of like Numbers USA, carrying capacity, and VDARE, type things. He has brought in a lot of their issues to the conversation, and he has changed the conversation. No one was talking about chain migration until 2017.
I agree with that.
Stephen Miller, I think, single-handedly actually did that.
Yeah.
And everyone always talked about illegal. Well, let's in a way give illegal immigrants their due, okay? Illegal immigrants are like a caste. They're peons. They go home. All they do is work. Yes, they commit crime because they're not good people, but they live in the shadows. They aren't us. They're not really part of the community. I mean, it is a very particular issue. What really fundamentally changes the United States is not so much illegal immigration, but this long-standing legal immigration regime, which has been going on since 1965 and really changed pretty dramatically, let's say in the late 80s and so on, to the point that it is going to flip the country demographically. By 2040, 2050, whenever, this is not going to be a white country, and it is going to look differently. It's going to feel differently. The tone is going to be different. The language might very well be different. I mean, it is going to be very different. And Stephen Miller has brought legal immigration to the debate. And so this is the way I see it. There have been a few paradigms in American immigration. There was the frontier as a paradigm. There was the 1790 Immigration Act, which was racial in a way. It was still a frontier. I mean, it was basically, if you get here, you're in. But it was, one must be a white person of good character. So it was kind of racial, but also frontier. And then there was this, kind of new, that started to change. By the late 19th century, there's this new paradigm of mass waves coming from non-Anglo-Protestant countries. There was a feeling that the country was changing. And by the 1924 Act, things had settled down where the country was becoming a nation. Basically, the 1924 Act was an amazing piece of legislation that was also racialist in character. And it not only wanted to keep the nation the same, it actually didn't want to do that. It wanted to go back to ethnic, effectively racial quotas of decades earlier. So it was actually an attempt to recreate a Nordic America and in a more or less Protestant America. And we had 40 years of that paradigm from 1924 to 1965. And that was the time when America, won the Second World War, had a massive economic boon, developed the space program, really became a nation.
Yeah.
And that paradigm shifted in 1965 when the new paradigm was chain migration.
Okay.
And chain migration now makes up a sizable majority of the actual migration that's coming in. And the left knows this, and they don't want to change it. So, Chuck Schumer has said quite explicitly, he said it to the New York Times, actually, so you can kind of take that as on the record, that they will not change immigration, that they will not make a DACA for the end of chain migration. But the fact is, however flawed the RAISE Act might be, and however too late all of this might be, I cannot have any emotional response to this other than respect for Trump and Stephen Miller. And I would respect them if they granted a DACA amnesty in order to end chain migration. That would be a new paradigm. And I could only tip my hat. Now, is that enough? Is it too little too late? Is it what I want? No. But it would actually change the paradigm for only about the third time in American history. And that is something that I can respect. So I would accept a DACA amnesty. And I think people who are we're getting into that conservative mentality of no amnesty, no amnesty, no amnesty. Well, all that means is that the status quo is going to continue indefinitely. And the status quo is killing us. So if they could work it out where there was an end to chain migration and they granted a major amnesty for 1.8 million or however many I would respect them.
Wow, that's I didn't think I would hear you say that you'd be agreeing to amnesty DACA. That's you were right when you said before we started you're gonna have to say something different than most of us on here.
Yeah,
however,
America's most notorious right wing.
I know. Amnesty them. Holy shit.
Amnesty dick.
Wow.
Amnesty.
So I just want to say real quick. Okay, so the two bills, if people don't know what they are, here's a quick rundown of it. The Paul Ryan bill is a pathway to citizenship for DACA, green cards for illegals, $25 billion for the wall, and it'll prevent family separation. It's all got some other stuff, but those are the major points. The Good Lap bill is $25 billion for the wall, 10,000 more border patrol agents, e-verify mandatory, complete end to chain migration, end to diversity lottery. How in the Paul Ryan bill it works is they change the chain migration and diversity lottery, but they add visas to the green cards to illegals, basically. So I don't think
none of this is touching H1B.
Yeah.
Or what is it? H1. What is it?
H1B.
H1B visas,
those
which are
terrible.
Yeah, those are truly terrible. Those are basically and it's kind of terrible for everyone. It's like you bring in almost literally indentured servants to a corporation who drive down wages on things like computer programming and so on, and then basically white people can't compete, and then you just have this slave caste. It is truly awful. Yeah. The other thing, just the university systems have been transformed dramatically, especially since I've been in college, and I wasn't in college that long ago. I was in college in the very the turn of the century, basically the late 90s and early 2000s, and then I went to graduate school. But I remember speaking to a supporter of mine who happened to be a professor at this Jewish university. He was not Jewish himself, and he was. It was a small university, but I won't say its name, obviously. But he was telling me he taught an intro to psychology course or something like this, and basically there were like 200 people and like 5 white guys. It's a Jewish university that's filled with like Asians and Indians and so on. And for a lot of those cultures, it's like if you go to an American university, even if it's not Harvard or Stanford or whatever, it's like, ooh, wow, you're in. You're cool. And so they just go. They're not. They're getting in here. They're getting jobs. They're getting internships. They're so on. That all of this stuff is not touched by, and they're not getting student loans. They're paying full price anyway. All of this stuff is not touched. So I mean, I have my own criticism of the bill. I am not a supporter of the RAISE Act in itself, in the sense that I want to return to racially based immigration, and doing high skilled immigration, which is the idea of the RAISE Act. I mean, keep in mind that like there are how many Han Chinese are there in China right now? 1.5 billion.
Yeah.
You know, there's 1 billion Indians. There's a tremendous underclass in India, but basically among this group of people, and even throw in almost 1 billion Africans, among this like 3 billion population, there are a lot of people with IQs of 115 and 125. And those are the kinds of people and who also can learn English. And those are there's this huge pool of people who could come into the United States and become doctors, become lawyers, become computer programmers, what have you. And, you know, we want white people to enter the middle class. You know, we don't, you know, I guess on one level, you know, high skilled immigrants are better. You know, would you rather live next to an Indian with 120 IQ or an African with an 80 IQ? Okay, I get it. But, you know, on some level, smart people are worse. Because to go back to this illegal thing, we always talk about the illegals. I'm not saying I'm supporting illegals, but illegals, they're peons. Like, they just come, they bus your table, they valet your car, they might pick fruit, and then they will leave. You know, and so I'm kind of I mean, this is again Richard Spencer speaking. Yeah. Kind of almost want to stick up for the illegals, they're not that. If you think that is the problem, you're not grasping the whole issue.
Now let me cut you off real quick, and I want to follow up on this, but I want to read these super chats because this one guy said he was about to go to bed. Frederick White says these calls are low energy and low T. Sadinsky Lawson, that was the guy who said he was
Thanks, guy. I'm glad he paid for that.
Yeah, Sadinsky Lawson said Iceland will win World Cup for white race. Space Force Commander says an ethno world for you and an ethno world for you. Simon Scola, who was just on the show, said thanks for having me on. Killstream is great. Thumbs up. Appreciate that. So I guess the criticism of going along with a more moderate bill or an amnesty is basically that you amnesty these people in, and while they might not be, you know, offensive, all these guys on the face of it, like you're talking about, they're going to be a huge voter block for the left wing, and then any changes you make in exchange for amnestying these people, once they become a powerful voting block and just add to the left wing vote, that they're going to end up rolling back any changes that you got in return for that.
Exactly. Also,
true, but this is the thing. It's not like something new is happening here. This low IQ, low skilled, you know, tremendously Hispanic immigration policy is the status quo. And what Miller has attempted, and what with the RAISE Act and the ending of chain migration, is to change that. And there's no question that a good many of those high skilled people are going to vote Republican. And much more than would happen if you're just bringing in every mamacita, you know, on earth. And so, you know, again, I'm not saying this is ideal. This is not my immigration proposal, but it's something.
All right. Go ahead, Sedan. You want to follow up, and then we're going to do a topic and then bring in callers, because I think there's a lot of people in there.
Okay. I was going to say, there are 20 to 30 million illegal immigrants here. If you start amnestying 2 million, then the rest are going to want to get more amnesty and amnesty. It'll never stop. That's the problem. Is once you start amnesty, it's a never-ending cycle, and then you have 30 million, you know, new voters. That in itself can change the entire presidential election. It can change dramatically every state election. It's a bad start. That's why you never give in to the amnesty thing. It's a no starter, in my opinion, at all. I know you want some stuff to get done, but you have to. Trump needs to use his bullying powers. He needs to get the Republicans on his side, and he needs to bully the crap out of them in order to get the good left bill done, because it doesn't allow for any sort of amnesty. There's no amnesty in that bill. It's the only bill that I think should have any chance of passing. Right. It'll give wall funding immediately. Basically, it'll give more border patrol agents. It'll give E-Verify is ginormous, because if you cut off the works, illegals working, they have no reason to be here. They will have to go back. They will either leave on their own or they will be sent back.
No, you obviously make good points. You know, my only rejoinder is simply that, you know, he's dealing with what is possible. I mean, you know, politics is the art of the possible. And if you can give over something symbolic, and I get it, you know, once you do that, they want more. That's true. But if you can give over something symbolic and then actually accomplish changing the paradigm, I'm not sure the paradigm can be changed without giving over something. And if you can give over something symbolic to get something substantial, I would take the deal. And I would not bash Trump. I have actually been Trump's critic. I mean, as many of you know.
I've seen that.
But if he does this and everyone's like Steve Bannon saying, "Oh, Amnesty done," or whatever, I'll be kind of like, well, hold on a minute. Like he changed the paradigm, and it wasn't perfect, but he made a deal. And oftentimes in life, things come with a cost.